All right, can y'all hear me? I hope you can hear me. And looks like y'all should be able to. So, what's up, people? What is up? How you doing? We're gonna make this one pretty quick. I'm doing this before I get back to bed. I've had a long day, been working most of it, but gotta keep doing this. Gotta. Any shoe. Before I jump into it, thank you again to the channel members: Annette Fisher, Steve Hughes, the Yebik, and Kriegsman. Thank y'all very much for being members. And yeah, if you want to become a member and keep the channel around beyond the end of this month, then go ahead and click the link that's in the chat. It says join the channel to keep it and enter to win a prize worth $2,000, which that prize is still on the table. We'll see how many members we get by the 30th of July, which is the deadline before the channel gets deleted. If we get enough members, there will be a random draw of the members to see who's going to get the prize. So stick around for that. But if we are unable to get enough members, nobody's going to win the prize and there just won't be a channel. So do your part, jump in on it, and let's get the channel to a healthy number of members. So that being said, so this one sounds really interesting. It sounds very interesting. And hi, Brandon. I'm not even looking at the chat, but I have a feeling you're there. You're always the first one. So yeah, this is Count Dankula, the Serbian Bottle Incident. This should be interesting. Let's see what happens.
There's a storyline that you very often see in sitcoms or kids' TV shows. A character tells a little lie, which results in them having to tell another lie, then another, and eventually it all snowballs into some zany set of wacky, comical circumstances that could have all been avoided if our character had just told the truth. And the moral of the story in shows like this is always tell the truth, don't lie, because lies can have consequences. And in the real world, people tell little lies. For example, sometimes people go into hospitals with something stuck somewhere that it shouldn't be. And they usually tell a little lie, like, I was just cleaning my house and I just fell over onto it and up it went, so they can save themselves a little bit of embarrassment over what they get up to during their alone time. And today we are going to be discussing a situation just like that. A man went into a hospital with something stuck somewhere that it shouldn't be, and he explained to the doctor what had happened. However, it is still up for debate whether or not this man was telling the truth or telling a lie. But
oh, buddy. Oh, buddy. I hope it wasn't. I hope it wasn't something frangible or something that could. Oh man, just imagining, like, just imagining. I don't like imagining it. Okay, I just don't.
But either way, what he said had extreme consequences. And you might be wondering, surely there can't be extreme consequences for telling a doctor a little lie about how something got stuck somewhere that it shouldn't be.
Well, that depends on if it's like consequences as in whatever's stuck inside is life threatening, or consequences that are directed at the individual. But not sure what he's referring to in this case.
And I thought that too. But it turns out we're both wrong. Because what this man said snowballed so much that it contributed to an entire region of the globe falling into chaos, war breaking out, the collapse of a country, and a few genocides. The Serbian Bottle Incident.
Wait, what? What? Okay, I think we're in for a wild one.
Please leave a like and a comment on this video because it really helps me in the algorithm. But before we get into the mad lad, this video was brought to you by Raycon. With Raycon earbuds, you can optimize your listening experience with mind-blowing quality at half the price of other premium audio brands. The new everyday earbuds are upping the...
Okay, I'm going to skip this real fast. All right, let's go.
It's a time of cool action movies, arcade machines, the NES, and the Cold War. This was a time when tensions were extremely high across the world as several world powers conflicted with their ideologies and split each continent in two. In particular, as we all know, Europe was the spearhead of the Cold War, as post-World War II Europe saw most of the powers divide into two sides: the glorious West following capitalism and the staunch East following communism. You know, just states doing state things. Today, we'll be focusing on this little area of Europe, a place known as the Balkans. So we already know that today's video is going to be very light-hearted, joyful, and family-friendly, as it always is in this region of the globe where the...
Oh, man. Oh, man. Look, we all know he's being sarcastic as hell right now. Because in the Balkans, there's never truly any peace. Never truly any peace. And I mean that literally. It's not much different from the Middle East. Not much different from there. Or Africa, for that matter. There's just never any peace or lasting peace to be had. There's always some shit going on.
National pastime is war crimes. But more specifically, we are going to be talking about the once great country of Yugoslavia, the land of the Southern Slavs. The man that we are going to be talking about today comes from Yugoslavia, but specifically the partially recognized country of Kosovo.
Shot Through the Heart, a very good movie. People should definitely watch that one.
Leave the Kosovo discussion for another time. This is where the middle-aged farmer George Martinovic lived in the small town of Gilan. Not much is known about the background of Georgie other than that he was ethnically Serbian and was more or less a peasant as described by some sources, although he did live with his family and had several grandchildren. And one thing I want to make clear before we go ahead, I'm going to absolutely butcher the pronunciation of a lot of these names and places in this video, right? However, I will try my best, but I'm going to fuck up a lot. And to be honest, there is...
Oh, man. You and me both, man. You and me both.
There's not much else to Georgie, as he lived a perfectly normal life as a farmer while apparently having a second job as a storekeeper for the Yugoslav army to further support himself and his family. As I mentioned, the height of the Cold War, and Yugoslavia at the time was in a sticky situation due to the late Yugoslav dictator Josip Broz Tito passing away in the early 80s, leading to a culmination of socio-political issues. You've got to realise that for over 30 years, a lot of relationships were built up due to Tito's actions, promoting the ideas of brotherhood and unity between the different ethnic diasporas within the Balkans. You could describe him as the unifying Slavic glue which bonded several broken nations after World War II, which led to a unique form of communism, of course known as Titoism. He wasn't a perfect guy, to say the least, but he definitely contributed to holding a lot of that region of Europe together.
Yes, to a degree. Then again, when you're pretty like when you're very hammer-fisted with people, just as a general rule, of course you're going to get a huge amount of them to try to stick together because most of them hate you. So that just goes with the territory is basically what I'm saying. If you're a hammer and everybody below you is a nail, okay? People are going to try some of the nails are going to try to stick together so it's harder to hit them individually. If you get what I mean. Not that I'm saying that nails have a will, whatever. You get what I'm trying to say.
But what does any of this have to do with Mr. Martinovic? Well, while living in Kosovo, Georgie was a Serb who were an ethnic minority in the region. Kosovo was mostly ethnically Albanian, although due to the current politics, it wasn't recognized as an independent state. So, as you can imagine, with the death of Tito and the gradual build-up of tensions throughout the Balkans, along with a rising surge of nationalism, this caused a great amount of worry in each local government, as it seemed that the idea of each region of Yugoslavia breaking away and becoming independent wasn't out of reach. Although, spoilers, that wouldn't happen yet for another few years.
And those of us who are old enough to remember hearing about it, um, and 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 kind of like having like there was so many different ways people tried to parse the Balkans back in the day, back when they were a much hotter topic. Um, but yeah, the Balkans have always had a severe issue with the Balkans. Anyway, let's keep going.
We will get back to the region's geopolitics in a bit. But as for Georgie, the year was 1985, and he was apparently sowing some beans out in his field, as a farmer does. Out in his field, the day was going well, the sun was shining, the birds were singing, everything was going great until allegedly, now this is the important part, allegedly, several masked Albanian speaking men came up from behind Georgie and drugged him with something that knocked him out. Allegedly, a syringe of morphine, according to some sources. The men then proceeded to tie Georgie up and then essentially turned him into one man, one jar, except with a bottle. They took a
He said one man, one jar. Oh, brother. It's so messed up. It's so screwed up. It's such a shitty situation. But still, kind of funny. It's your fault, Count. It's your fault that it's funny. An issue. So, allegedly, a bunch of Albanian speaking guys drugged him and then put something up the somewhere, and that's the story so far. Okay. Let's see what happens next.
A 500 milliliter glass beer bottle on the end of a stick and pulled a little bit of a Vlad the Impaler, and they shoved it somewhere. That
Give me a sec. A glass beer bottle. A glass beer bottle. Oh man. Ah. That's terrifying. That is terrifying. And what if it like shattered like on the way up? Just oh no, 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 no. Okay, let's continue.
this probably isn't getting monetized, but I'm going to at least try. Now, we aren't sure if the bottle was broken or the insertion, or if it was kept whole and then broken after the fact. But what we do know is that Georgie's rear area was very badly injured. They left the old farmer in agony until he woke up in a pool of his own blood before going to the hospital. Now, this is where things get a little bit complicated because what I've just told you may not be entirely true, as there are many different tellings of this story. The things that we do know is that, yes, Georgie was out in his field, and yes, he did have a bottle shoved somewhere which did severely injure him. What we aren't sure about is whether or not this was self inflicted. Did Georgie do this himself, or did some Albanian men do it? Well, some sources state that in his state of injury, Georgie either crawled to the local hospital or was more likely noticed by a passerby who saw the old man clearly injured, and then they took him to the hospital. Once he was at the hospital, Georgie told the doctors the very story that I just told you, where several Albanian speaking men, so more than likely ethnic Albanians, had drugged him and then proceeded to do the thing. With the current state of Yugoslavia, this was seen as a horrendous act against the local Kosovo Serbs. But this would only make things worse. A lot worse. Now, apparently, while in the hospital of Pristina, the capital of Kosovo, Georgie was interviewed several times by local authorities, some saying he was even interviewed by Colonel Novak Ivanovic from the Yugoslav People's Army, which could be true due to Georgie apparently working in the local base. But again, we aren't 100% certain. So there might even be some military ties here, but many sources haven't really underlined any particular reason why the military were investigating this.
Okay, so already there is several different stories, apparently unverified, so many different angles to look at. It's all right. If y'all are confused, so am I. I'm severely confused. There's just so many. There's so many stories. Let's continue. We're hopefully our confusion gets cleared up later in the video.
Would usually be a job for the police, who were also investigating this case. But for some reason, the army got involved. When they investigated the area of the incident, they had found pieces of the partially broken bottle on a wooden peg, although they commented that there was no traces of the attackers found in the area. Though, for some strange reason, they didn't take any items as evidence. They just left it all lying there. They then actually went back to reinvestigate the scene and actually collect the evidence. But it had rained overnight. So things like fingerprints and footprints were now gone. The evidence was ruined. But the fact that they didn't actually collect this stuff in the first place is, it's a little bit sus.
So, more police, either incompetence or negligence or corruption. More of this. Shouldn't be surprised. Really shouldn't be surprised.
To add to the poorly done investigation on the crime scene, some sources have also mentioned that Colonel Novak Ivanovich actually pressured Georgie to confess that he had been the one to inflict the injuries on himself. And allegedly, Georgie did admit to that. Georgie allegedly admitted that he put the bottle in there himself and then he lied to save himself from embarrassment. But it's hard to tell if he admitted it out of pressure from the authorities or if he genuinely did do it himself. I mean, this was the Yugoslav army in the 80s. They were very, very scary people and they had a reputation to back it up. So
he could have been coerced by the Yugoslav People's Army to confess to doing something he didn't actually do. But why would they do that, though? What's the motivation to them to make him confess whether he did that or not himself? Huh. Interesting.
So people very often did whatever they told them to do, even give false confessions. Apparently, Georgie was even promised particular benefits if he did admit to mutilating himself. His children would be given jobs, which would be a very tempting deal considering his background as a poor peasant. An explanation for why Ivanovich wanted to convince Georgie to admit that he did this to himself, even if he really didn't do it to himself, could be because Ivanovich understood that this area was an ethnic powder keg. And if it got out that some Albanians did this to a Serb, even if they really had, shit would kick off. So Ivanovich wanted to make sure that didn't happen. Truth be damned. So you see why this story has been so hard to figure out. As for the potential suspects, the authorities only had one thing to go off, and that was the suspects spoke Albanian in an area full of Albanians. So this was going to be a little bit of a difficult search, especially considering that they had no other evidence. Although there was one Albanian gentleman that allegedly offered to buy the very field where Georgie was injured, and Georgie had actually refused his offer prior to the attack.
Ooh, it's getting spicy. So possibly Georgie was victimized by an Albanian because he snubbed the dude out of selling his land. And the dude was like, "Hey, I want your land. Sell it to me." And Georgie was like, "No." And so, the Albanian, would be purchaser of the land could have been like, "Okay, boys, teach him a lesson."
This could have led somewhere, although it turned out that the gentleman in question was in Switzerland. So they stopped the search.
Good alibi.
The lack of enthusiasm from the authorities to actually find the perpetrator was said to be because of Georgie's version of the story, which a lot of them didn't believe, making the entire investigation seem a little bit pointless. This brings forward the issue of the different perspectives at the time of the incident, or what the local and national newspapers would deem as the Martinovic case. There were two versions of the story, as we've discussed. Either A, Georgie got a little bit horny, which resulted in a little accident, and he used the Albanian majority as a cover to save him from being embarrassed. Or B, he actually was assaulted in an ethnic focused crime, either due to the land scenario or by random Albanians who were doing this because of the ethnic tensions in Kosovo. As you can imagine, most Serbians believed in Georgie's side of the story, but most Albanians and even other neighbouring states believed that Georgie did this to himself. This only got worse when the papers started publishing about the attack, and this roused the different ethnic groups, in particular the Serbs and the Albanians. The Serbian based newspaper known as the Politica published an article which detailed the incident where two unidentified persons, and I quote, committed a real massacre, end quote, against Georgie Martinovic, an employee of the Yugoslav People's Army House in Gilan. Georgie was attacked while sowing beans. He was then tied up, and then the attackers, and I quote, stuffed a broken bottle into his body. This promptly brought a huge reaction from the Serbs outside of Kosovo, causing a massive outrage. And the papers further exacerbated the situation by highlighting the so-called ethnic cleansing of Kosovo by the Albanian population. Although not every paper would have the same outlook on the situation. The Albanian-based media, of course, reported a very different take on the story. They had focused on the idea that Georgie was actually a homosexual who had accidentally done this to himself during an act of self-gratification. And to avoid the consequences of a very traditional society, he had presumably invented the attack to avoid dishonoring himself or his family.
Oh man, this dude. Okay, on one hand, there's very severe tensions in the area. Heck, everybody knows about the Balkans. Well, okay, a lot of people that actually pay attention to what's going on in the world knows about the Balkans. And not to mention that this guy, no matter which way this goes, he's walking on broken glass. Damn, like, and pretty much nothing that's said about the incident can be taken with more than a grain of salt. because everybody has their own agenda in this. But we all know where this is going to go.
On the opposite side of Yugoslavia, the Croatian papers posted something a little bit more comedic. In their articles, they had published theories about the incident, speculating that Georgie was having a little bit of me time and the bottle had slipped, or that he may have jumped off of a nearby tree and landed on the bottle. So, while tensions were building up between the Serbs and the Albanians, the Croatians were just straight up using the headlines to shitpost. Very.
Oh man, I gotta see that again. I gotta see that again. Albania, Serbia, chick fight. Meanwhile, Croatia's over here doing you know what. Man, you gotta love the internet. It's one of the most entertaining things on the planet.
To shitpost. Very quickly, the Martinovic case started to increase in popularity as the current political controversy. There was even an alleged attempt to cover up the issue itself. Now, it's hard to tell if the newspapers and media were influenced by the politicians of the time, which, let's face it, is more than likely. But there was a weird amount of propaganda over this event from either side. Propaganda is basically two conflicting sides fighting to see who can tell the most convincing lies. So, as soon as propaganda became involved, it became almost impossible to discover the truth, which is why, even to this day, it has been so hard to establish whether or not Georgie was lying. As for the attempt to cover it up, the current Yugoslav communist ministers focused on highlighting that the Martinovic case was nothing more than a homosexual man that injured himself during some fun time.
What I would ask is if anyone had tried to, if anyone had really tried to find out whether or not Georgie was homosexual. Because it doesn't sound like anyone even tried. It does not sound like anybody tried. If they were able to find that out, they probably could have sorted out the truth pretty quickly. I mean, but instead, everybody's like pointing fingers at each other in like multiple ways. Like, oh man. Yugoslavia is broken glass at this point.
The main reason for this possible cover up was to attempt to maintain brotherhood and unity, not just within Kosovo, but throughout Yugoslavia. As if more and more cases of ethnic attacks occurred, either by fact or fiction, it could start a domino effect that would lead to the downfall of Yugoslavia. One of the key figures that spearheaded this operation to bury this story, let's call it Operation Hide the Bottle, was the infamous head of the counterintelligence service, also known as the KOS, Stani Dolans. I mean, an intelligence service literally called KOS. I mean, that's a little on the nose. He had further dismissed the case to the public, saying to a group of journalists, and I quote, "The case of Georgie Martinovic is over. My police have determined that he injured himself and there is no trial. Georgie is the first Serbian samurai to commit harakiri over himself." For those of you that don't know, harakiri is another term for seppuku, Japanese ritual suicide.
And now some secret type of police kind of things going on. This is like a really horribly written comedy at this point. Like the the future of a nation, of a country, is revolving around the truth of whether or not some guy got you know what put in the you know where, and they want to find out how. Doesn't that sound like a C-rated movie at best? That's what this sounds like. That's exactly what this sounds like.
Which again goes to show how little they took the incident seriously, shrugging it off as an accident. The opposition to this version of events was the Serbian intellectuals and other key figures who made their opinions on the case very clear. One of the more notable people was Dobrista Ćosić, a Serbian politician and political theorist, known for being the first president of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Apparently, Georgie's wife and daughter had reached out to him for help, in which Dobrista put them in contact with Velimir Švetic, Šveti Balls, who represented Georgie legally in the coming years. Along with this, another Serbian writer by the name of Branislav Šerčević commented on the situation, saying it was for one man, comparing it to the World War II Jasenovac concentration camp, which was run by the Ustachi regime at the time. This is where thousands of Serbs, as well as other ethnic communities, would be put to work and then killed, similar to Nazi concentration camps, as they were basically a puppet of the European Axis powers at the time. So, to say the least, this was a very strong comparison to be made, highlighting how strong opinions were at the time about the Martinovic incident. Furthermore, a key Serbian painter by the name of Misha Popovic had also painted a scene recreating the symbolic torture that Georgie went through, titled The Crucifixion of Georgie Martinovic. Of course, this was heavily influenced by Christian imagery, depicting Georgie being drawn up on a cross by several Albanian Muslims, while the local authorities stood by, allowing it to happen, being based on the martyrdom of Saint Philip.
This incident even inspired art. Does it sound like a really bad comedy now? They literally drew a picture of the dude as like, you know, someone who fell into the footsteps of Jesus. Like, oh, this is so ridiculous. This is horrendously ridiculous. Sounds like it's not even C rated anymore. It's like D or E rated at this point as a comedy. Like,
and if you look closely, you can see that he even added the bottle. The recurring religious themes would stay throughout the discussion of Georgie's case, and in particular, the discussion of Islam and the Ottoman Empire. In particular, a well-known psychiatrist called Jovan Rashkovic had highlighted the...
Why does this guy look like a real fat, bearded Rasputin? Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Doesn't he look like a fat, bearded Rasputin? Oh, brother, we all know where this kind of mad, religious, magic doctor type of stuff goes.
The acts of aggression in the buttocks region as due to their psychosocial development. Specifically, he said, and I quote, Muslims are fixated in the anal phase of their psychosocial development and are therefore characterized by general aggressiveness and an obsession with precision and cleanliness. I've heard a lot of statements about varying races and ethnicities, but I do have to say that is a new one. These claims of Ottoman-like acts of aggression, like the impaling that they did, as we discussed in our Vlad the Impaler video, stirred up a lot of past emotions, and most Serbians were very well aware of the atrocities that happened to them during the Ottoman Wars. In particular, the very field where Georgie was injured wasn't far from the field of blackbirds, in which a large battle took place between the Ottomans and an amalgamation of Christian powers during the medieval period, which was known better as the Battle of Kosovo. The first of many. All this, with the combination of references to the Ustachi camps, created a great amount of distrust between the other ethnic communities and the Serbs, making it seem like deja vu for the Serb nationalists. The general fear of genocidal campaigns became one of the forefront reasons to resist such attacks and to distrust the authorities even more. There was a huge amount of speculation, and more people started questioning the case, because it turned out when Georgie was initially treated by the doctors consisted of 2 Albanians and only 1 Serb. Along with this, the authorities who investigated the incident were all mostly Albanian. As you can imagine, this made people believe that the verdict that the injuries were self-inflicted was a cover-up to protect the local Albanians, truly making it hard for anyone to believe either story. All of these inconsistencies, propaganda, remembering past events, and fearing more attacks that would just be covered up by the authorities caused a lot of Serbs to start seeing the writing on the wall.
Oh, brother. You could tell that any illusions of a, you know, of a unified Yugoslavia have been shattered. Accidental pun, actually.
So, where does the story go from here? Well, before being transferred to another hospital, Georgie was treated, and the doctors apparently commented that they found parts of the bottle as far as his hypochondrium. And for anyone that hasn't had a beer bottle up their chufter, that is pretty far up. But again, we aren't sure if that report is true. The particular hospital he was transferred to was the Military Medical Academy in Belgrade, the capital of Serbia. While in the medical centre, Georgie was on 24-hour supervision by the army, and only authorised visitors were allowed to enter, so close family and doctors. Of course, the media wasn't far behind him, and journalists were near the hospital waiting for any information they could get. While in the hospital, apparently the army wouldn't even let Georgie talk with Velimir Svetic, the lawyer that his wife and daughter managed to contact via Dobrista Chosic. So the army weren't even letting Georgie speak to his own lawyer. Again, Georgie went through more surgeries, which were performed by several doctors. How many exactly, we aren't sure. After examining his injuries, some of the doctors had come to the conclusion that these injuries were not done by self-harm, but instead inflicted by someone else. They also examined Georgie's mental state, to which they said that Georgie showed no signs of homosexuality or bisexuality. So he was diagnosed as straight.
Oh, shit. Oh, brother. Oh, damn. This is so horrendously ridiculous. So horrendously ridiculous. He was diagnosed straight. This is more like an F-rated movie by the minute. An F-rated wannabe comedy that was made by some like left idealist who had no who was all abstraction and no imagination whatsoever. Somebody like that. That's what this sounds like.
Although sadly it seems
Like Antifa tried to make a movie. Antifa tried to make a movie about the right and failed.
over time, Georgie needed more and more
Oh,
surgeries
shit.
since there was just that much damage done to his rear region. Some sources report that he was even sent to London to St. George's Hospital to get a further 2 surgeries, which were performed by Dr. Peter Hawley. Peter, the proctologist, successfully performed the operations and apparently concluded, after reviewing the medical case, that any form of self-harm was excluded, saying that this attack must have been done by at least 3 people. After this, Dr. Peter Hawley received a threatening letter from Dr. Janez Malczynski, a doctor from Ljubljana who had previously examined Georgie's injuries. He had sent this letter to Dr. Hawley because, and I quote, he interferes in the internal affairs of Yugoslavia, though I think it was Georgie who had his internal affairs interfered with. So it was clear to see that the tensions were getting rather high. And
Oh man, how petty. Just petty as hell. Stupendously petty. You're interfering in the internal affairs of our people. Whatever. Whatever. Still, though, the Count is just savage with it. He is a savage. Although I'm sure it was only Georgie's internal affairs that were meddled with. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Let's keep going.
the Slavs would prefer the opinion of other Slavs rather than what they saw as an outsider. So, what happened to Georgie after his surgeries in London? Well, his case was brought to 2 national assemblies for discussion. This included the National Assembly of the Socialist Republic of Serbia, along with the SFRY, or more commonly known as the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. His case was discussed several times and was also rejected several times due to particular ministers questioning the validity of the incident. It's hard to tell how many times exactly it was discussed since the sources have conflicting numbers. And of course, over time, this incident was obfuscated by the government several different times. While the legal case was taking place, Georgie had found a residence to stay at via his lawyer in Avala near Belgrade. This case would surprisingly go on for years to come with different. Of course, the whole case would be disrupted because the case was being very widely reported in the media, and things were starting to boil over, and ethnic clashes were now happening throughout Yugoslavia. Now, remember the previous doctor I mentioned, Dr. Janez Malczynski? Well, he was one of several doctors summoned by the state to investigate the situation and to establish whether it was possible for Georgie to inflict these kinds of injuries on himself, or if it was done by several men during a planned attack. It turns out that allegedly Dr. Janez Malczynski was a close friend of Stane Dolans, the head of counterintelligence, who was responsible for a lot of the case's obfuscation and cover-up. Funnily enough, they come to a very ambiguous conclusion. And to be fair, I guess it would be hard to conclude if either situation happened, but it does seem a little bit suspicious considering the doctors had a direct connection to the head of counterintelligence. The discussion of the case would go on for several years, but eventually there was a breakthrough. It wouldn't be until 1990 that Georgie would see some sort of compensation, and he was given between 100,000 to 150,000 German marks because several different sources claimed different amounts within that region. Although I'm unsure as to why it was in German marks and how much that would even be worth, but let's just say it was probably a decent amount. And during the trial, funnily enough, the state itself was found guilty of insults and tendentious concealment of the truth, which, to be honest, was pretty self-evident.
All of this is like a big headache. A big headache. All right, let me read the chat real quick. Even though there's only two of y'all in here. Hey, Greg, what is up? How you doing, my old man? Brandon Peters, pretty much all the way down. Magic Man, laugh out loud. Yep, racism strikes again. Bro, not even his lawyer, not cool army. Antifa are so dumb as hell. Are people BS? People are people everywhere. Yes. It's just different cultures will clash. Brandon Peters, Werewolves of London. Annette Fisher, Guten Morgen. Brandon Peters, the state is found guilty. Oh, brother. This one's giving me like smoke out my ears. I'm going to have an aneurysm from this freaking one right here.
However, Georgie and his family didn't even get a penny of the compensation. The compensation may have been used to pay off his lawyers, or it was apparently seized by the state. Neither of these stories have been confirmed, so we just don't know. So, after all of the trouble from the Martinovic case, what exactly did it accomplish? And why is this case so synonymous with the breakup of Yugoslavia? Well, throughout this video, we have discussed the very many ethnic tensions that already existed throughout the region. And a high-profile court case can very often inflame ethnic tensions. So, think of things like the Rodney King trial, O.J. Simpson's trial, the George Floyd trial, Rittenhouse, like very public and very widely reported trials in the media that did fan the flames of ethnic tensions within America.
Facts. It also depends on who influences the media. And who owns the media. That's a big part of it as well. You can't have impartiality if your media is owned by somebody. It's impossible to have impartiality. Also, if your media has anything to do with your government, it's biased with whoever holds sway in the government, essentially. So yeah, like this one's giving me a headache and it's making me sleepy because it's such a mess. It's such an absolute mess.
So picture a trial like that, but in the Balkans. Yeah, things went nuclear. Ethnic tensions just absolutely blew up, which contributed to the downfall of Yugoslavia. Furthermore, some sources speculate that after the Martinovic incident, there were an increased amount of attacks against Serbs within Kosovo, although we aren't sure if this is true or part of the apparent Serbian nationalist propaganda train. What we do know is that the state did hide details of this case. So still to this day, we aren't sure what exactly happened. The government even went to the extent of censoring documentaries on the Martinovic case. Two in particular were called We Accuse and Fear of the Truth.
Hey, who does that sound like right now? Who does that sound like right now? Who does that sound like right now? That sounds very much like who's in charge of basically the Western world right now. That's exactly what it sounds like. Sounds just like the U.S. government, doesn't it? Wunderbar.
Although we couldn't get a copy of these as they have most likely been memory hold. And also, a name you might have heard of, Slobodan Milosevic, one of the key figures during the Balkan Wars, was also accused of using the Martinovic case as a foundation to build allegedly fictitious allegations of genocide against the Serbs within Kosovo. This is what sparked the intellectuals of Belgrade to further highlight the ethnic issues within the region. Only 4 years after the Martinovic incident, Kosovo had its autonomy reduced drastically by Slobodan, which led to further outrages from the Albanian people. And as we all know, ethnic tensions just continued to get worse and worse. And then eventually, boom, the powder keg went off. The Balkans pretty much became a complete war zone for about a decade. There were very, very, very many war crimes and genocides, and the nation of Yugoslavia broke apart into several different countries after a lot of armed conflict. So, what happened to Georgie? Well, after all of the commotion that was caused by the incident and the many surgeries he went through, Georgie soon moved to a village called Chitluk, how apt, near the city of Kruševac, where he spent the last of his years before finally selling the infamous Serbian bottle field. Georgie had a very large family who he loved very dearly, and of course, they still remember him to this day. Georgie passed away on September the 6th in the year 2000, and engraved on Georgie's gravestone are these words: "How can we thank you? You left for your offspring, remembering your sad tragedy. You will be remembered as a martyr and the eternal sacrifice of the Serbian people." Now, was the Serbian bottle incident the main reason for Yugoslavia breaking apart and all of the war and death? No. There were very many other factors.
Uh, my head hurts. My head hurts. Uh,
That came into play. However, the Serbian bottle incident did very heavily fan the flames of ethnic tensions, which were a major factor in the preceding Balkan conflicts. So, what happened in the field that day wasn't the sole reason that the country fell apart, but it really did contribute. But we arrive at the ultimate question: what actually happened in the field that day? After all of the propaganda, the government cover ups, the biased media, and interference from the army and counterintelligence muddying the water so much that we have no idea who is telling the truth, what really happened? So, did a group of Albanian men drug Georgie and then turn him into a human popsicle? Or did Georgie put that bottle in there himself? And I've got to be real, I think Georgie did it. I think he done it. Hey, Georgie, we all got bottles up our ass down here, Georgie. Like, I'm sorry. I think man did it. Motherfucker did it, right? However, I do have my doubts, right? See, because of all the meat.
After all that, the Count's just like, you know what? I think you did it. I think you did it.
Media and government interference in this case, I'm still not 100%. So I am about 77% sure that Georgie did it, though I'm still not 100% certain. And a lot of you might have a different answer, and we can speculate all we like, but I don't think we're ever going to find out what really happened. Is that how you say his name? I literally have the pronunciations here. Did I say that right? Velimir Svetic. It is Svetic. Sveti balls. Sveti balls. Smashing.
Sveti balls. Oh man, I'm tired. My face hurts. And this one hurt my brain. There we go, folks. There we go. Count Dankula, the Serbian Bottle Incident. Okay. It's all over with. Oh man, we're done now. We're done. I'm tired. Shouldn't have done this, but I should have. So yeah. All right, let me read the chat. What did y'all think? Well, let me know. Let me see. Kevin, welcome to the live stream. For real, Brandon. A lot of them are PC. Brandon being confused about what PC means. Kevin, PC means politically correct. If anything's politically correct, it's stupid, it's ignorant, it's dumb, it's racist, bigoted, it's homophobic, transphobic. If anything's politically correct, it is just anti-human. It is. Brandon Peters, definitely look up how long World War II actually lasted. Look up how long World War II was. Annette Fisher, my cousin served in Boonsver, enlisted in Kosovo. Okay. Brandon Peters twice. Oh yeah, sometimes PC can get a bit carried away. PC is always carried away. It's always carried away. Annette Fisher explaining to Brandon that it was the German army, which is the Bundeswehr. Brandon Peters 4 times. Oh, cool. Go Germany. Invade the Reds. Crazy to think we want Germany to go into Poland and attack Russia. My, how the world has changed. You know, we should have dealt with Russia. We should have listened. We should have listened to Patton. We really should have. Yeah, everybody was tired of war. But that should have been dealt with before we did anything else. Before we did Reconstruction, anything. We should have taken down every totalitarian, authoritarian, and you know, anti-human regime there was. We should have taken them all out at once and got the world behind us on that. But instead, everybody was like, okay, that's enough. We're done. We'll leave it for the next, you know, few generations to deal with. Brandon Peters, Schvetty balls. Yes. I don't, but some other people do. Brandon Peters, are we doing requests? Probably not. I'm tired. This one hurt my freaking brain, y'all. This hurt my brain. And it It made my eyes hurt and my face hurt. Urgh. Kevin, period. Yes. Brandon Peters, anti-human is bad. That's what PC is. Politically correct is exactly what it sounds like. Politically correct. It it's anti-human. That's what that means. That's what that means. Uh Brandon Peters, I wonder if we could invade from the right side of Russia. With Japan helping out. We would have to take out or disable Russia's nuclear arsenal first. Or find a way to mitigate it completely. However, we do have some stuff that um I'm trying really hard not to give a lot of shit away. But I'm just saying if we got attacked in that way, it wouldn't be as bad as everybody's thinking. It'd be bad, yes. But we have some stuff that would make it not so bad. That's about all I can say about it. Okay, so I guess that's it for the chat. Cool. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. My brain hurt because there was just so much political, like, shenanigans and stupidity just from all sides on it. Then again, the Balkans was a mess before this. It was just part of the powder keg being lit. So yeah. Okay. Brendan Peters, we could get CIA inside and start guerrilla war there. Indeed. But here's the thing. The Russian people have been under, tyrannical rule for so long. It's literally part of their DNA now. They would not know what to do if they were handed freedom with a silver and gold platter. They would have no idea what to do with it. They would have no idea. They've lived underneath the boot for so long that they wouldn't know what to do with themselves. They wouldn't. At this point, it's too late. At this point, they would be better off getting, completely X'd out or balkanized at the very least. They wouldn't be able to handle themselves at all. So, yeah. All right, y'all. Again, I'm going to say thank you to the channel members, Annette Fisher, Steve Hughes, the Yabik, and Kriegsman. Thank y'all for being channel members. Thank y'all very much. Now, pinned in the chat is a comment, and it says, join the channel to keep it and enter to win a prize worth $2,000. So become a member. Click that link. There's also a link in the description box down below. And behind the subscribe button on every single video is a button that says join. Those are all different ways you can become a channel member and help keep this channel around past the 30th of July, which is the deadline for deletion. So we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. So, that being said, be good. Seriously, be good. Be safe. Don't compromise safety and security. No matter where you work, where you live, just don't compromise. Just don't. Your life's not worth it. Your family's life is not worth it. You want to see tomorrow. And make a good life for yourselves. And you can't do that if you end up compromising your safety and security. We don't know what's going to happen in the next day, week, month, year. We don't know. We have no idea. So make the best of it right now. That being said, I'm off. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one. Blast Cat Badger, out.